WEMB Sports Radio.
Here we go. It's Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson. You can listen if it's a little staticky on the signal. You've got summertime. It's, summer storms, all that. From our 5,000 watt tower in the Valley Beautiful in Irwin, Tennessee. How's that for laying it on thick right there? But no, if it's a little bit static here, so here's what you do. Go to jetbroadcasting.live, listen online. Or go to Facebook. Like us on Facebook. We're the most liked sports radio station in the market on Facebook. More than 1,600 followers, more than 1,600 listeners, or likes. I would imagine more than 1,600. I'll do that. We get to. You look at the numbers that we do. I didn't slug yesterday's show, but yet I'll be doing that this afternoon, I suppose. Regardless, we're talking a little bit about ETSU, but as I was saying, like us, WEMB 1420 WEMB Sports Radio on Facebook, and you can watch this show on archive if you can't quite get to wherever. And I mean, also, when you do that, we take care of our sponsors on Facebook. I've been telling you about Asian House. Go there right now for lunch. The lunches begin at $5.99, and you get 10% off just by mentioning my name. They're right there, Shops in West Market, on Market Street, like you're going to Jonesboro from Johnson City, or from Jonesboro to Johnson City on the right-hand side. Shops in West Market are actually off of Leisure Lane. And there are no more leisure lanes. I was like, really? No more bowling alley over here? All right. It's about where, anyway, it's about a mile down from State of Franklin and Market, 321 11E. You know where that's at. And discount right there for lunch. And the other thing I've always suggested to people is that, you want something exotic, you want something different, sushi. Sushi for lunch because it's high in protein. It's not going to slow you down later on in the day. Not like a burger or fried chicken or whatever. That sort of thing would do, certainly. And so you're going to get the whole afternoon of work in that you otherwise would not. So that's good. It's at Asian House right now. Shops in West Market, mention my name, 10% off. So those are things that we do when you broadcast and watch on Facebook. Also wanted to say, I was talking about how this year the comparisons between the ETSU football team 2019-1997. Now, 97 was actually at that time, and I still think it does hold up as one of the best years in ETSU football history, which hasn't had the greatest football history in the world, let's face it. But it's a 7-victory season, and there really haven't been that many of those. In fact, last year the Buccaneers won 8 games, and that was the 3rd most victories they ever had in a single season. So this was the 4th most. I mean, still to this day, and it was the 3rd most back then. So it wasn't a bad year in that sense, just, lost some game. I think that ETSU, what was said about them, and this I can so see, because when we talk to Jack Stallard, I can talk about this difference in sports culture, East Tennessee and East Texas. And I've always said, East Tennessee, they want to put a positive spin on everything, especially ETSU. You could be on a 37-game losing streak at ETSU. They're still going to tell you how wonderful it is. They're just not, that's just the way they are. And there still is a lot of the 1939 Tennessee Volunteers, undefeated and unscored upon. How'd they do in the Rose Bowl? Well, they lost it. We're talking the regular season. There's always just a little bit of a spin out there on local sports teams and all this, Well, this team lost 69-0, but boy, did they try hard. Maybe we should address why they lost 69-0 instead of trying to make apologies for them, that sort of thing. Anyway, and that is, like I said, so ETSU. And so there was a feeling in 1997 that there were games that the Buccaneers lost that they shouldn't have. Case in point, after the Appalachian State victory I told you about, only won in Boone since '78, lost the next week. Defeated Furman that year. They were nationally ranked in the then Division I AA poll. Next week they lost. Started 2-0, started believing maybe they're on press clippings, lost to James Madison. That doesn't sound too bad now, but back then James Madison was 5-6. I lost in Harrisonburg and all that, but so that was the disappointment of ETSU. And also I think one of the reasons I was saying, Todd Wells, remembering from back in the day, Wells probably is, and this is a legitimate nominee for greatest quarterback in ETSU history. The Johnny-come-latelys would say Austin Herring, because they don't know every QB in his, and all that. Greg Ryan would certainly be one of those that would be considered, who was the predecessor to Wells. But 4-year starter, yeah, you can make a strong argument for Wells as the all-time Bucs QB, certainly on his stats. Anyway, but Wells never really, I don't know if it's because he was from Georgia and Ryan was from Greenback High School, so, that's not local, but it is East Tennessee, or that it was Matt Wilgem who replaced him from Science Hill, so that was local, and Wilgem went 6-5, and so, Wells went 6-5 before, or maybe it's just when you kill the football program a couple of years later, yeah, those legacies, maybe they don't build on like they should, But Wells, as I said, you can make the argument, but it's so similar. Coming off a playoff berth, here's something else. I mentioned Ryan was from Greenback. Where was Austin Herring, last year's starting quarterback? Also, like Ryan, a 4-year starter, and certainly with the flair for the dramatic. And Ryan had the flair for the dramatic as well. If you are of the era 1994, ETSU goes to Western Carolina 7-3. Yes, folks, Western Carolina used to be good in football, and ETSU wasn't so good. They were 5-5 and had their first chance to end a streak of 7 straight losing seasons. That was on the line. And ETSU won the game in Cullowhee, 34-31, on a late fourth quarter touchdown drive from Greg Ryan. And if you were of the era, that was quite memorable. Well, just like Herring leading the Buccaneers back from 3 touchdowns against Furman, or this past year, Captain Comeback, I guess you could kind of call him. The J.J. German field goal his sophomore year against Samford, and also the comeback against Western Carolina that year. Speaking of comebacks against Western Carolina, that one at BMS. There were the 2 touchdown deficit to Western Carolina, but ETSU coming back against Western Carolina a lot, huh? But, coming back from 15 points down in the fourth quarter to win in overtime last year, Herring did, so the flair for the dramatic comeback, both quarterbacks had it, and now they've got to be replaced. And so the similarities are there. Now, here's what to remember on the ETSU competition. And wide open so far, what we know, for the quarterbacks. And I think that a safe bet is that it would be one of the transfers. Thrasher or Weldon. And as I said, I think that just, the Miami quarterback comes to ETSU. Doesn't really matter that he was a third stringer. Doesn't really matter that Mark Richt probably gave him a scholarship because his dad had made his coaching career at Florida State, Casey Weldon, when he was number 2 for the Heisman Trophy a generation or so ago. And that elevated Mark Richt to a status where he could then become a successful head coach at Georgia and Miami. Yeah, I guess win the national title. He won 2, I think, as offensive coordinator. Was it 2? But anyway, at Florida State. Anyway, that was, that's who I think the smart money says will get the job. Especially because if you remember last year when Logan Marchie started ahead of Austin Herink, and I think one of the reasons why is that Marchie had transferred in from Temple. Hey, that's all things considered, a big-time football school, not in the Power 5, but in the American, certainly outranking, the American legitimate football conference and all. It's putting up 245 yards against Notre Dame, you play those, yeah, sure. So he came from the highest level of football. I think Randy Sanders liked that. Maybe it didn't work out initially. Maybe he should have stuck with Herring. I thought he should have then, at the time, but nevertheless. I still like Marchie, but anyway. But you've got all these similarities, as I said, even down to Greg Ryan was from Greenback and Austin Herink was from Cleveland, and now you've got probably an outsider who's going to replace him. Here's what the success of the 2019 Buccaneers will rest on. Not necessarily the gaudy stats that they'll put up. And hopefully, it'll be if the rest of the team believes in him. Just like the rest of the Buccaneers believed in Austin Herink last year, maybe not so much Logan Marchie for whatever reason. Second thing that's very important, keeping the team in line. Again, remember 97, ETSU would win a big game against Appalachian State, just lose the next week. Believe their press clippings. As a quarterback, if you can keep the highs, not so highs, and the lows, not so lows, that's how ETSU will have a successful season this year. And that might be the most important thing for the quarterback, is just assuming the leadership role that certainly Herink did last year. When it comes to football writers, Vito Stellino's our leader, and he's talking NFL next.